Welcome to the latest episode of Getting to Know Jew from the Kansas City Jewish Chronicle. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, your host this week, and I'm very excited to talk with new Herzl Camp Executive Director Josh Levine. Josh will be moving to Minneapolis next month, but will undoubtedly have Kansas City visits on his itinerary as he settles in to meet the families that send their kids to Webster, Wisconsin every summer. Josh, welcome to the show.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So you are the newly announced executive director of Herzl Camp. As we are talking, it's been roughly 27 hours, I think, since the announcement went out. So mazel tov, for starters.
Thank you very much.
And secondly, what has this first day since the news come out been like for you now that it's official and it's out there?
It's been tremendously exciting to get to know some of the Herzl community, hear from them, hear their warm wishes. It's almost a little overwhelming to feel the embrace of this community that the more I learned about Herzl Camp through this search process with various interviews and conversations, the more interested and excited I became about the camp. But to now be named as the next person to be in this role and to be beginning to get to know this community, it's been incredibly exciting, and I just can't wait to get started.
So most recently, you were the executive director of Camp Alonim, which is a pluralistic Jewish camp in Southern California. Based on your experience there and what you know of Herzl, both from generally within the Jewish camping world and through the last few month experience of the search, what was it about the job that really appealed to you and where you thought your background at what is for what it's worth, a much bigger organization and much larger offerings than Herzl is, but what do you think you bring that made it such a good fit?
Well, I think that Herzl Camp is a camp that I've always admired and looked up to from afar from Southern California as a fellow independent, pluralistic, Zionist Jewish camp. We learn a lot from one another, and I think that Herzl Camp's deep roots and in the community and the affection that people have for Herzl Camp, the way that the board put out a job description that talked about a role for a camp that is really rightfully proud of the rich traditions that it has and is also eager to serve even more people in even more important ways. It's a camp that is really passionate and has a lot of very passionate people who care a lot about it, who want to make sure that camp is as good as it can be. And also, it's a camp that wants to continue to ask those questions, which I think independent and pluralistic camps are so well suited to ask, which is, what can we do to serve the people that need camp so much, the families and the campers and the staff who come to us and need that camp experience in their lives. It seems like Herzl Camp was in that place where it's asking those questions, and I thought I'd be a good fit for a camp that's really proud of its history and wants to make even more of an impact on the world and the communities that it serves.
So, I'm curious, the move from California to Minnesota, your start date is mid-January is when you'll be moved here by. I know the staff is eagerly counting down the days for your arrival. Have you been to Minnesota in January before?
I haven't, but I hear I need a scarf. Am I right?
Scarf would be good. A hat might be a good idea too. It can get a little chilly. You might have heard that.
I have. Well, I have heard from some friends that you must really be excited about this job to move to Minnesota in January. And my answer is I am. I'm incredibly excited about this job and to be joining Herzl Camp at any time of the year. And January seems like as good a time as any. I'm maybe not thrown into the fire, thrown into the ice. I don't know. There are a lot of ways to say this.
There's a lot of things to be thrown into in Minnesota in January, yes.
I started at Alonim, my previous job, in May before the summer, where it was a summer of reaccreditation. So I think that going into a place at an interesting time of the year adds an extra spice, and I can't wait to. I would come to Herzl Camp sooner if I could, because I'm just so eager to get to know the community and to get started on the work.
So I'm curious about your background in camping. You were at one point working in the law before transitioning to camp. Obviously, you worked at camp. You were at Alonim as a camper. You worked there as a counselor. You went on this totally divergent path and found your way back to camp. I guess, tell me a little bit more about that journey, because that interests me, how you go from camp as a teen, or through your college years, and then a very hard right turn, and then coming back to it.
Well, I think the best paths have those turns, and I like that. I feel very blessed to have been able to do a lot of things that have really interested me, and the vast majority of people who go to Jewish summer camp then go on to do other things and not work in camping professionally. And I love that there are people out there who love Herzl Camp, who carry Herzl Camp with them, and all of the various different things that they do are out in the world, spreading some of that Herzl magic in their workplaces, in their families, in their communities. So for me, even though I left camp, I carried camp with me in that turn that I made, as you said. So I was a lawyer, attorney, and a law clerk for a wonderful period of time. I really liked it in many ways. I also realized that there's this great quote that that really resonates with me, that don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who come alive. And for me, what makes me come alive is camp, and specifically, I think the opportunities to help people become the best versions of themselves. It might be cliche to say that, but I'm a true believer. I'm a camp nerd too. I mean, I believe this stuff because it's true.
Right.
Camp is a place where people become the best versions of themselves. So also, people become better parents, better teammates, they lead better meetings. They are more inclusive. Camp does so many things. And I think that what makes me come alive is helping make that possible, engaging other people who care about making that possible, giving people their first jobs and watching them and encouraging them and challenging them. I love that kind of work. There's a quote by a singer-songwriter who I grew up with a lot, his songs at the camp where I grew up. His name is Harry Chapin, and he is just an incredible singer-songwriter. Your podcast listeners should go listen to his music as soon as they're done streaming this. And he has a recording that he talks about his grandfather, saying that there are two types of tired. There's good tired and there's bad tired. And bad tired, ironically, could be a day that you won, but you won it fighting other people's battles, chasing other people's dreams. So when you go to sleep at night, you toss and turn, you don't settle in easy. And good tired could actually be a day that you lost, but you chased your own dreams and you fought your battles and you did what you wanted to do and felt good about doing in the world. And when you go to bed at night, you settle in. And I know that whatever work I do, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to be tired. I want it to be good tired. And when I saw some of the partners that I worked with as a lawyer, some of them loved what they were doing. And this is what they feel like they were meant to do on this earth. And that's wonderful. I just realized that wasn't what I was meant to do, or at least wasn't what I was meant to do then. And then I clerked for judges. Those were some of the best experiences of my life. And one of the best things I loved about those clerkships was watching judges not only do the legal work, but mentor people in the community. So all of these various ingredients got me thinking, what's next? And what if it's something like camp? What if it's something more like camp? The fact that it became camp is an incredible delight for me and surprise, but a very pleasant one.
In my experience, camp is the only thing like camp. It's very hard to replicate. I mean, you could certainly replicate certain elements of things about camp in other circles, but it doesn't quite, I feel like it needs all of the things to come together to make it feel right.
I think that a challenge that camps have, and it's a challenge that they're very much up to meeting, is helping the kids. When I say the kids, I mean the campers and the staff, helping them take camp outside of camp. Because I don't want people to say the only place I feel this connected to Judaism, connected to myself, be able to be myself, having these close friendships is at camp. So I think that camps can do more and more to help kids take camp out of camp. And sometimes that means involving their families more. Sometimes that means creating programs that are beyond the traditional summer season. Sometimes it means explicitly addressing this with the teens at camp. How are you going to take what you have here, whatever it is for you, out of here? How do you begin to articulate it? Because I know, and it's always going to be that, I can't describe it, but it's just amazing. But I wanted to drill a little more deeply for the kids to be able to articulate it to themselves at the very least, so that they can then take some of what they're getting into not the real world, but the outside world. And because the world needs that. The world needs them to show up fully for their community, for their family, for their friendships. And it's important that people who go to camp not only have this incredible experience on site, but care. And the studies show that they are changed in so many important respects. I want them to realize that and to even be intentional about how they want to take this camp experience into the rest of their lives.
I think that's really interesting is that it doesn't, at least in my experience as a counselor and as a director of a day camp at the JCC in Chicago once upon a time, like it doesn't teach you those values necessarily explicitly. You almost have to read a little bit between the lines in order to absorb it, both as the counselor who's trying to gain that wisdom from a camp director and vice versa as a camp director trying to put it out there. I feel like it doesn't work as well if you're hitting them over the head with it. They almost need to, like, if you want to hear it, you hear it.
Yes, and you hear it by hearing and by seeing and by sensing. You're using all your senses. It's an immersive experience. And so much of the learning comes from the relationships and the role modeling and the role models that you have. So I think often about some of the role models that I had as a camper, as a teen at camp, the way that they conducted themselves, carried themselves, the way that they talked to us, the way that they challenged us, the way that they resolved problems that we were having as a group, and the way that they stood back and with a very gentle nudge helped orient us to solve our own problems. Incredible life lessons and skills that we developed. And the skills, the director that I had for most of my years growing up at camp where I grew up was a role model, still is, and has become a dear friend. And he would talk about camp as the place where we practice being human. And I think the key word there is practice, which means making mistakes and learning and developing a practice of humanity and of getting to take care of other people, to take care of yourself. And it's the process, it's the time that you spend, and the fact that camp is a sustained intense amount of time in community. It can be incredibly impactful.
What have you found in your experience is the best way to empower staff, I think specifically, but to really be sort of that best version of themselves, so they can then, because they are, this is better than anyone I would imagine, is that these counselors, they're not that much older than some of the campers, and they are very much role models for the kids that attend camp every summer. So how do you empower the staff to be able to pass that sort of lesson and wisdom on to the campers?
I think that is the core goal, Lonnie, of a staff orientation process. We can talk about the do's and the don'ts and the hows and the whats, but it's the why of camp, and it's helping them orient themselves to thinking of themselves and believing in themselves and knowing that they're role models. I believe in the phrase that if you want to give, you want people to act responsibly, you give them responsibilities. So I think one way to empower them is to not just talk about empowerment, but to empower them, to give them the opportunity to create programs. We not only tell them that they are vitally important Jewish educators, but we make sure that they have opportunities to be those Jewish educators in the more formal and less formal senses in the work that they do. We don't just announce, here's what we're doing this summer, but we invite them and require them really to co-create the summer experience for the kids and their fellow staff members. So we don't want the counselors and the staff members to think that they're coming into a new experience at camp with everything laid out for them to just implement. Some of them think that they want that. They want more specificity. They want more direction, but it's actually more fun, and they'll grow as well as the campers will benefit from them learning about their kids and thinking about and dreaming about and planning what would be best for this group of kids at this moment in time. And then to get the support, of course, and the mentoring and the oversight and the resources from the camp leadership to be able to go and implement that. I think empowering people means empowering them. And that also means sometimes often recognizing the best ideas are not, I'll say for myself, I don't have everything figured out. And I want the campers and I want the staff to know that I know that, and I want them to have plenty of canvas to paint on. And sometimes the hardest thing is helping them recognize you have that canvas. We want you to paint. We will find ways to give you whatever paint colors you want and need in order to paint the most amazing painting that you want. That's my role, is to give you and that's our role, to give you that permission and those resources. And I think that can be an intoxicating almost experience for them to have. And but also it's sometimes unfamiliar, and I think it's unusual even in a lot of the educational experiences that some of them have had. But it's necessary, and amazing things then happen. I can think of numerous examples in my career where people have created programs and experiences that have been life-changing because they've been simply given permission and encouragement and the resources to do so.
First of all, I got to tell you, I love how far you carried the paint metaphor. That was outstanding work.
Thank you.
But I think it can be scary. I think as somebody who's been a counselor before, it's scary you have to, there's got to be a certain willingness, and it's nice to have leadership that empowers you, but you got to take the training wheels off, to switch the metaphor up a little bit. And you've got to, you've sort of got to see how far you can go and take something, safely, responsibly. But I think camp is best for the kids when their counselors feel empowered to be able to make that experience as best as they can for them.
I agree with you. And I think that for the counselors and the entire staff, it should be a little scary. I mean, this is important work, and they're working with kids, and they need to also understand and feel as much as they can at that age the awesome responsibility that they have, taking care of these souls, taking care of these people who not only are obviously so important to their parents, but also themselves have their own narratives and stories. And actually, sometimes with the staff, I will literally encourage them to crouch down and to see camp from a different angle. Because, and that's a little gimmicky, but it's also, I want them to be able to understand that they're creating an experience and have an awesome responsibility and an incredible power. Kids will learn from them more than they even realize. And I can't make them realize all of that, but I and we really can help them understand that. Sometimes that can be a paralyzing feeling, but then we can move through that into a feeling of, all right, this is hard. This is really important, and we're equipped to do it. And in part, At Herzl Camp, one of the wonderful things is that so many of the staff there grew up at this camp. So I want them to think, how can we make an experience as good as I had it, but how can we make an experience even better? And they feel that oftentimes incredible responsibility and excitement to take care of that next generation of campers. I want them to know that the people who came before them to take care of them when they were kids were feeling some of the same feelings. And now it's their turn and they're ready for it. And we're going to do some amazing things together.
So one of the fun things about Herzl, yes, it's based in Minneapolis, but there is a lot of regional draw. I didn't quite realize how big, but Kansas City is the second largest market for Herzl Camp. It would draw a lot of families from St. Louis. My kids have friends and, past Ozream, who are from St. Louis. They're from Iowa. They're from Kansas City. I know there are quite a number of kids come from Omaha. So as you come in and settle down into the position and, I suppose, first find a house and move and everything, how do you plan on doing the outreach to all of these other communities that make Herzl part of their summers as well?
Well, first, let me say, actually, in reference to one of your earlier questions, one of the tremendously exciting things to me about Herzl is its location, is the Twin Cities, and also that Herzl Camp serves a lot of communities, many in the upper Midwest, as well as other locations. And I think that that's great and awesome, and I'm incredibly excited about it. I think there are a lot of ways to do it. One of the ways is by traveling to them. And I'd love to, as much as possible, taking the long view. And it's a marathon, not a sprint, but that initial sprint is important too. And I'd love to see, to go visit Kansas City and Omaha and St. Louis and some of the other places that send a lot of Herzl kids, or just have some really dedicated alumni who would be great to meet, or some clergy or some community members, whoever, to get to know them and to show up and to listen. Because I've got a ton to learn about Herzl Camp and about the Jewish community. When I say Jewish community, I really mean Jewish communities here. So showing up, and some of that might be over Zoom or on phone calls or in different ways. But building those relationships, I think, is really important. And also recognizing that with great gratitude, I'm coming into an organization with tremendous lay leadership and professional leadership who have many of these relationships. So getting to know these communities and learning from the board and the staff who themselves have gotten to know folks in these areas is also going to be a tremendous help. I'm incredibly excited that Herzl Camp serves a lot of places and I'm looking forward to getting to know those folks and those places in the years to come.
I am remiss for not having mentioned a disclaimer earlier in your first reference of the Herzl board, so I will do so now. In the interest of full disclosure, my wife is on the board and was part of the interviews that the finalists went through. I was privy to zero information, for better or worse, until the official leak came prior to Thanksgiving, in which the board were told they were allowed to tell people by word of mouth, but not by social media. So I did not find out until then. So there, disclaimer over. So you mentioned you feel you have a lot to learn. What is you'd been at Alonim for a decade, basically, right, as the executive director, or in various roles, finishing as the executive director. Coming into a new organization, what do you see as one of the more daunting things, like you feel like you need to try to get a hold of right away? I'm sure there are 15 of them, but what do you think is like most present on the horizon for you?
I think Herzl Camp is rightfully beloved for so many of its traditions. And I want to know as much as possible about why people love this camp. What do they think it's doing really well? What has it done really well for them, for people, for their loved ones, for people they care about? And what are the dreams they have for Herzl? And I think the opportunity to hear about Herzl's successes, as well as what various people from a wide range of backgrounds care about and want Herzl to do more of, or to do less of, or to think of how they think about Herzl, I think is going to be an incredibly eye-opening and important experience for me to get to know this organization. I know actually that I'm going to make mistakes. I know that I'm going to pronounce some words differently than Herzl does. That there are certain terms and certain rhythms that I need to pick up to get to really know this camp and community. And I'm really not only committed to doing so, but eager to do that, and recognizing that inevitably a new set of eyes is also there's newness in that. I think a key goal for me is to just get to know people, for them to get to know me, and for them to realize that for me to realize that we're only beginning. But if they can see from me that how excited I am, and how much even though I've never been yet on Devil's Lake with them or their families or their kids, I soon will be, and I'm so excited to be, and I hope to be for many years to come. I want them to open up to me. I want them to know that I'm going to open up to them, and we're going to get to know one another, and we're going to do some wonderful things together, and building on an incredible foundation that Herzl Camp has. That's one thing I'm also incredibly excited about, that Herzl Camp has this rich tradition and this incredible history. Turns out that Herzl's founders, that some of them were inspired by the experience that their daughter had when they sent her to the camp that also then led to the Alonim, the camp that I'd be coming from. So I love that we have some shared history, and also I very much recognize that these are very different places with different traditions and all sorts of differences. But what we have in common is that we all love camp and believe in camp's power and are committed to its future. And that's what I'm really excited about getting started with.
Josh Levine, thank you so much for joining me on this week's show. We are excited for you to get to Herzl Camp, but also to come and meet our Kansas City community as you settle in and get to know the communities that love Herzl so much.
Can't wait to meet everybody. Thank you so much.
The Getting to Know Jew podcast is a product of the Kansas City Jewish Chronicle and the Jewish Federation of Greater Kansas City. It is part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network and produced by Jewfolk Inc. Please rate, review, subscribe, and share. If you have suggestions for future guests, please email the show at webmaster@jewishkc.org.